Welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dream punk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 36 of Brainstorium. Now, bearing in mind the title of today's show, I'll be upfront with you from the start. I don't really like superhero stories or movies. Every time Hollywood brings out yet another film about Spider-Man or whoever, I just groan. Not always quietly. But a word combination that cropped up in the story brainstorms of the last show reminded me of a rather odd character I'd come across in Victorian literature who might be one of the first examples of a modern sort of anti-hero come vigilante, Spring-Heeled Jack. This got me all curious, so I looked it up, had a little read of some so-called penny dreadfuls, which were the magazines publishing short stories in those days. And it got me thinking about vigilantes and superheroes, and if there's anything useful that you and I could take from these story tropes, which are very much alive and in use today. Because in every story trope, even if it's in a genre we don't write in, or even particularly like, there are things to be learned. If the trope is popular and resonates with a lot of people, that means there's likely something universal in it, relatable, translatable into something you and I might enjoy reading or writing. You don't have to like the teacher to learn something from them. That's how I feel about superheroes in general. But let's not think of this as a lesson. This is, as ever, more of an exploration with a lot of what-ifs along the way. So pick up your imagination backpack and join me on this unexpected pathway. And don't forget to stick around for the story brainstorms afterwards. First, if only for entertainment purposes, have a listen to how Spring-Heeled Jack is described in the so-called Penny Dreadful. He's said to wear an enormous black cloak with a hood which covered him from head to foot, and a tight-fitting garment underneath of a blood-red colour. And I quote, "He threw off his outer garment, and applying the lighted candle to his breast, presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, and vomited forth a quantity of blue and white flame from his mouth, and his eyes resembled red balls of flame. One foot was encased in a high-heeled pointed shoe, while the other was hidden in something like a cow's hoof, in imitation, no doubt, of the cloven hoof of Satan." I nearly said Santa. Excuse me there. The cloven hoof of Satan. It was generally supposed that the springing mechanism was contained in that hoof. He's definitely painted as a villain here, and this would have been lapped up by Victorian readers as cheap, gratifying horror. However, of the scary stuff, so far I've only found these short accounts, a bit like articles you might find in a newspaper, and there's not much else continuing in the vein of horror. An attack is described, someone gets hurt or is threatened, but the scenes don't last long and they're written in such an arm's length style. I'm not quite sure whether it's just the difference in culture back then, or maybe readers found it more terrifying if the style mimicked that of a newspaper article or a police report so that it felt more real. I don't know. After a flurry of these very short snatches, a much fuller story begins, which describes the origins of Jack's character. And this was a popular trope at the time, to tell the story of someone's life from birth. But this time, in the long story, we see things from Jack's point of view. I mean, we kind of have to, if we're tracing his whole life. I wonder, it would have been very difficult to maintain the sense of fear and trepidation about Jack in this format while watching him grow up and seeing the circumstances which unfold and lead to his decision to become this villain. How can we not sympathise with him when it's written in that way? So this longer story is a big contrast from the short article-style pieces, which are obviously meant to instill fear about this unknown, mysterious being who might be a demon. Essentially, Jack is tricked out of his inheritance by a bitter, greedy cousin, and he swears he'll get his revenge. But he does have a good heart, and along the way, during these vengeful attacks, he performs good deeds whenever he can, like freeing a young woman from imprisonment by her evil father. And yes, they are a little extreme, these situations he comes across. Damsels in distress and all of that. It is bizarre that his cousin doesn't manage to work out that the highwayman robbing him of the rent he's collected on the family property and who calls himself Spring-Heeled Jack isn't his own cousin, also known in real life as Jack. But the cousin does work out that the two people are connected somehow, and he believes that this phantom or demon, Jack, must be employed by the real Jack. Not the brightest character, but hey-ho. Jack's namesake, his spring heel, is a very expensive contraption which he pays a specialist craftsman to make. He attaches it to his shoe and it enables him to leap very far, very fast. It's mainly this leaping that makes people believe that he's a demon, but later he uses phosphorus to create the strange blue glow from his mouth. Yeah, don't do this at home, kids. I have no idea how realistic this is, if in reality anyone might have poisoned themselves by doing something as ridiculous as that. While the story is kind of long in this telling style we don't get much nowadays, it's just so wonderfully odd. A villain we can root for, who's also treading the very thin grey line of morality, stealing back what's rightfully his, but then causing terror at the same time, and then throwing in acts of kindness as well. Reading it made me think about superhero stories from a whole new angle, because it's an unfamiliar rendition of something essentially very familiar, probably too familiar in my personal opinion. So what can we learn as writers from a genre we might not ever want to write in? Let's have a look at some of these tropes which haven't really changed much over the years. We have the obvious one, special powers. Whether these are a trick human-made or a kind of magic which is inherited, as with Superman, or thrust upon the protagonist quite randomly, like Spider-Man being bitten by a spider. I personally quite like the pull-your-sleeves-up craftsmanship of someone deciding to develop a special skill or a trick effect. It makes you nervous in case it might not work, and so it makes you root for them. But either way, a special power or a talent becomes story-worthy when the character is in some way awkward or ordinary, at least to begin with. If the powers are magical, the protagonist might be taken by surprise by them, possibly reluctant to use them, or are endangered by those powers. A long section of such a story might be them trying to deny that anything's changed, while hiding or running away from people who seem to be hunting them down or attacking them, before he or she is eventually forced to face the truth. This could then lead to them meeting a wise person, a sage who can train them. And there are lots of big movies I'm sure you can think of where we get a training sequence. Always enjoyable, even for the likes of me, and I don't really like things like that. This is a great way to make your readers feel wonder and discovery. We naturally wonder and discover as the protagonist goes through those same sensations, getting to know this power or talent they have and testing it out. An important detail is that the powers must not be absolute. There's no use in a story for a protagonist who is all-powerful and can easily get whatever they want. Conflict is the food of story. Our character must desperately want something they cannot get. So let's try out an example, a little bit of genre mixing, just as a thought experiment. If you're writing a story that's rooted in realism, ask yourself, just as an experiment, how might your story change if you were to give the protagonist some special power or skill? Let's take a murder mystery, because there are plenty of those in books and TV, and the vast majority are grounded in realistic settings, with not even a whiff of fantasy. What if your investigator is a middle-aged, world-weary character? How might he cope if he suddenly found himself with peculiar abilities? This could add some comedy and really highlight his character, show us his habits which persist even in the face of the impossible and these wild, crazy changes going on. Here's another one. If your investigator is young and uncertain, trying to prove themselves by solving their first murder, that's also a good solid grounding for a character we could relate to. Maybe not so comedy, though. What happens when this young investigator discovers she has an uncanny ability? What if she finds she can read minds or become invisible and sneak into places without people seeing her? In some ways, her job may become easier if she overhears a conversation or can spy on suspects unseen. But what if she can't prove any of the things she sees or hears? What if technology refuses to work whenever she uses her power, so she can't record anything? This might make her job more frustrating and difficult. It might even throw suspicion on her if she seems to know too much and can't prove how she found out these things. The best powers or talents are probably the ones that make life difficult or complicated, or might completely backfire. Another superhero trope which might have nothing to do with superheroes or powers: a passionate cause. This is a really universal trope which you can use in a story no matter what you're writing, and it might not even have the faintest trace of fantasy. The best causes are the ones that are both personal and affect other people, preferably a whole town, a city, or possibly even the whole world. It might not begin as a universal cause. It might begin from the seed of a personal desire for justice that later becomes part of a much bigger cause. This is a great way to increase the stakes later on, when the protagonist discovers how his problems are linked to everyone else's. Dig deep to work out how this cause has come about in the first place and how you might find these connections, these linkages to other people. Has the protagonist been wronged somehow? Have they lost someone they love and Might they blame it on someone else or on an organisation? Do they want revenge or justice? Might they slip back and forth between the two? And what if they discover more wrongs this individual or organisation has committed, meaning that others would desire such justice if only they knew what has really happened? A third trope of superhero or vigilante stories is a dual personality or a dual life. To some extent, we all have slightly different personas in that at work we have to behave in a certain way. When we're with the in-laws, we might behave another way. Even in the queue to the post office, we might behave differently than we would in our own home, depending on circumstances. So to build a story from this idea of dual personality, we just have to ask, what if, and take any one of these to extremes. Extremes might lead us back to supernatural powers, of course, like Jekyll and Hyde, or someone who's able to adopt deep disguises. But whether our imagination leads us to powers or realism, dual personality as a trope certainly leads to secrets. For surely, whatever enhanced abilities our protagonist may have, whether natural talent, crafted or magic, whether chosen or forced upon them, what really grips us and keeps us wanting more are actually the limitations, the flaws, the difficulties and the restrictions. The rules about who they can and can't tell their deepest and most impossible secret. So we might not be looking to write about actual superheroes or vigilantes ever, but we can still pick up some tips here and there and twist these incredibly popular tropes into something entirely our own. Now I think it's time to see what secrets lie in wait for us in the socks of destiny. That's right, and those who've listened before will know that Exquisite Corpse mixes random words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun, and you can send me these very words and phrases on my play page at annatizard.com. So let's reach into the first sock, the describing word sock, and see what it has for us today. So this is from social media ID EdgeO'Erin1. Curmudgeonly. Do you know what? I had to look this up and I scribbled a little note on the side because I haven't come across this word in ages. It does indeed mean bad-tempered and have a negative attitude. It's such a chewy word, curmudgeonly. Right, the next word from the noun sock is from Joseph Clark, spinning top. Okay. Right, let's go for an action. See what the action sock holds for us. This is from Martin Horton. Hid vast quantities of tagliatelle as a surprise for. Okay, so it just demonstrates you can do quite a lot with the action part in the middle as long as it fits in the sentence structure. I've got examples on the website when you're filling out the words, but yes, this is a meaty one or a tagliatelle one. Right, the next word is from Stephanie Dargan-Lucha, fierce. Okay, and the final word for this first Exquisite Corpse is from Robin the Mail Lady, squid. Okay, as usual, we have our work cut out for us, but this is the whole point. This is such a good exercise for the imagination, and we definitely need some muscle there if we want to write great stories. So let me put it all together and tell you what the complete sentence is. So all together we have the curmudgeonly or bad-tempered, negative spinning top hid vast quantities of tagliatelle as a surprise for the fierce squid. Okay, let's be calm, take a deep breath and plunge into these potential story ideas. Let's just give it a chance. Initially, I'm drawn to the describing word noun couplings, because sometimes they can be a bit more physical than the action, and we can get some clue from there. So a spinning top, how can a spinning top be curmudgeonly or have negative connotations? Something that's going round and round. I'm now drawn to the tagliatelle issue because how do you actually make pasta? Is it possibly in some kind of big a cauldron-like pot with something going round and round, twisting? Because tagliatelle is the little ribbons. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is totally unrealistic. But I am picturing now a machine for making pasta and separating these ribbons, and that is my spinning top for now. Why would it be negative? And on the other end of the Exquisite Corpse, we have a fierce squid. Could that be someone, like a nickname for someone working in a restaurant? Someone who likes seafood, or has sort of strange pasty skin, or who squirts sauce at people, the way squid squirts ink. Ooh, maybe this is a really quite frightening character, perhaps revered. This is the head chef or the manager of the restaurant, and he's called the fierce squid, maybe behind his back, and someone decides to play a trick on him. Then again, looking at the tagliatelle bit, that's meant to be, it sounds like a gift, a surprise birthday meal cooked for this head chef or manager. What could go wrong? What about we try applying some superhero tropes to this and see if that gives us a bit more guidance? So the fierce squid can change shape. Perhaps they all can. All of the staff change shape, and they change shape into the creatures that they cook in this seafood restaurant. Oh, that is really very bizarre. A kind of twisted poetic justice, maybe. And when they have a lock-in for a private party, so they can go beyond their normal opening hours, go beyond their license, that's when the changes take place behind closed doors. The guests who are friends, maybe some of them are just acquaintances who've just been pulled into this birthday party because not very many people like the fierce squid, this scary restaurant manager. These guests begin to witness a change in the staff and some of the people they thought they knew well. Oh, this could be quite ghoulish. It's certainly very, very odd. You could try writing it and see where it goes. And a change sort of comes over various people after the doors are closed on a party. Interesting. Anyway, let's move on. I'm reaching into the describing word sock, and we have something from Honor Harlow, mighty. Okay, what word comes after mighty? see. This is from me. Misunderstanding. The mighty misunderstanding. Okay, nothing quite like an abstract noun to just throw you out there. This action is from T.F. Burke, the poet and musician. Burst. Ooh, that's rather different. Let's try for another describing word. This is from Anonymous. Get quite a few from Anonymous. Rainy. Ooh, okay. Burst and rainy makes me think of clouds, but wouldn't necessarily work that way. Our final word is from wickedwords_Kate. Beauty reviewer. Okay, let's put it all together and see what we've got. The mighty misunderstanding burst the rainy beauty reviewer. This is most peculiar. I think it's time I had some green tea. It's been brewing for a little while now, so let's give that a stir. Right. Okay. So, a beauty reviewer. She writes an article where she completely misunderstands a product. What could that be? Mixing up, I don't know, toothpaste for a facial mask? She makes a mistake and it leads to all sorts of outrage on the internet, trolling, and it causes her to cry. Hence the rainy beauty reviewer. Let me just read it again. The mighty misunderstanding burst the bubble of the rainy beauty reviewer. What is this misunderstanding? What else could it be? Maybe it would be more interesting if she is the one who's misunderstood. Add a psychological complexity there. Her words are taken out of context. Someone quotes her article or misquotes an article, and so all the complaints and trolling just piles up on the internet. And there's something particularly horrible about being trolled online because you can't easily defend yourself in the way that you would if you were just having a conversation to set the record straight. I'm not sure about this one. What if I try using some superhero or vigilante tropes here? How about the passionate cause? Maybe this beauty reviewer is against animal testing and accidentally reviews something from a company that does a lot of testing. And her online followers turn against her and call her out. But she had no idea at the time. It was a mighty misunderstanding. Or what else? What about someone who has a talent for seeing through the lies people say? Maybe they're a psychologist or a journalist who's really good at calling people out for their true held beliefs, as opposed to the things they say they believe in on camera. I imagine that would not go down well with quite a lot of politicians. But then she's accused of a mighty misunderstanding. Or if she's a news reporter and she keeps misunderstanding what people are saying to her genuinely, whether it's a correspondent calling in from an on-location bit of filming or while she's doing an interview. And is it perhaps her nerves that are getting to her, confusing her and muddling her up? Might she lose her job due to a horrible misunderstanding? Is this comedy? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this one. I think we need to move to another Exquisite Corpse. The socks are getting rather empty. I hope that if you're listening, you might consider sending me some words because it's starting to get rather thin. Okay, so our first word of the third Exquisite Corpse is from Elena Dennison, regal. Okay, next word is from Martin Horton, hobgoblin. A regal hobgoblin, a king or queen of hobgoblins. Interesting. So let's get an action word. We have from Warner Hedgehog, ignored. Okay. Next word is from Robin the Mail Lady, decadent. And the final word is from Mariah, car. Okay, so the whole sentence is, the regal hobgoblin ignored the decadent car. Okay, so we have a king or queen hobgoblin travelling in a gold-plated carriage that's being dragged by, not horses, but ogres, just because. A king or queen of the hobgoblins, they can afford more than horses. The hulking ogres bent double at the front. Why would this queen hobgoblin think that a car was decadent? I wonder if it's something to do with effort. Everything is earned through effort or hard graft. I'm making this up, by the way. I'm not an expert on hobgoblins. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. So even if the queen of hobgoblins doesn't like to put much effort into things herself, she may have this view held by the wider culture of hobgoblins that all wealth must be earned through hard graft, even if it's somebody else's. Okay, so we've got the ogres pulling the carriage through the forest on rough, bumpy ground. The tree roots make it extra lumpy underfoot. And then a car whizzes past in a forest. Okay, let's change that to a moor. A rugged, tussocky moor in the hour before sunset. A car screeches past. Perhaps it's driven by humans who've stolen a car, or even pixies joyriding. This is all feeling rather fantasy. That idea I had about a culture valuing effort and pain. We do have an old adage that no pain, no gain, but sometimes I think this goes a bit too far in that you have to work smart, don't you? There's no point pushing yourself on something that isn't necessarily going to get you results. Perhaps in that way we all have an inner hobgoblin telling us, keep going, keep pushing, even if things aren't working out that well, and perhaps it's a foolish choice we've made. Gosh, how did I get here? I'm having a philosophical thought about effort and where it takes you. Okay, let's just revisit then how else we can interpret this exquisite corpse. Why would this regal hobgoblin sneer at a human car? Perhaps they would perceive human mechanics and engineering to be a kind of dark magic, frowned upon. Hey, that's not actually a bad idea, to flip magic on its head. You could try writing something from a magical or mythical creature's point of view. Having a conversation about the decadence of humans and the weird magic they seem to have. The buildings we construct, the vehicles we drive, confounding the rules of nature, or so it might seem to a mythical being. This could be a fascinating perspective to explore through a story. You take something quite ordinary and day-to-day and try and see it from a totally new, alien perspective. Imagine the simplest occurrence and how it might seem to another being who lives by different rules. You could have a scene just of, someone waiting for a bus. Someone goes into a shop and they tap a plastic card onto the end of a strange metallic device, and then they come out with milk from a cow. It's all really strange, isn't it? Shopping? It's witchcraft. You could just write it for fun, or you could use it to make a statement about something that really annoys you about modern day life. You could make a statement about climate change, or just some stupid things that human society does. Pick something you think shouldn't be part of our lives anymore and make a mockery of it by writing it from this alien perspective. Or just do it for fun and explore a new voice. So let's just go back over the rather strange story ideas I've come up with today from the Exquisite Corpse gameplay. So first of all, we have a ghoulish tale of someone who turns up to a birthday party for a chef or a manager of a restaurant who, while the tagliatelle is being spooned out, transforms into his nickname's sake, a fierce squid or some other creature. What if the staff don't realise what's happening to them and only the guests can see it? That would be a really weird situation. Bit of fantasy, maybe a bit of horror. Just play around with it. Then next we have a mighty misunderstanding. In fact, those words alone could be a good writing prompt, because you could build anything, any situation where you've said the wrong thing or others have taken your words and completely misinterpreted them. What would happen if you can think of a situation in your life where someone misunderstood you? Could you write about that situation? In fact, imagine if instead of saying it, you wrote it down in a blog or an article and then got a reaction from it. And then finally, we have a regal goblin versus a decadent car. A mythical or alien perspective on an ordinary human device or occurrence, seen afresh or turned on its head by a new pair of eyes. Because I guess that's what writing and reading really gives us. We get to see things from perspectives that we wouldn't otherwise get to see. Stories take us outside of our normal perspective, so we get to experience things from a different point of view. On that note, I hope you've found some inspiring ideas from today's show, and I wish that you will go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstorium. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.